A fuel-injected system uses fuel pumps to move fuel through a metering system to the cylinders. The fuel flows from the tanks to the fuel selector valve, the gascolator, the electric fuel pump, the engine-driven fuel pump, the fuel injector servo regulator, the fuel distributor, and the fuel nozzles into the cylinders. The Archer has 2 fuel tanks, which are located in the wings. Each tank can hold 25 gallons of fuel, with 24 gallons being usable. The fuel tanks are vented to prevent creating a vacuum inside the tank. As fuel flows into the engine, the extra space is replaced with air. The fuel selector valve has 3 settings: left, right, and off. The filter drain, also called the gascolator, is the lowest point in the system. Its purpose is to filter contaminants out of the fuel. The electric fuel pump acts as a backup to the engine-driven fuel pump to deliver fuel to the engine. The engine-driven fuel pump delivers fuel from the tanks and the wings to the engine. The fuel injector servo regulator meters the amount of fuel and air, which is set by the throttle and mixture. The fuel flow transducer measures fuel flow in gallons per hour. This is indicated on the G1000. The fuel distributor meters a precise amount of fuel to each of the 4 cylinders. The fuel nozzles deliver the fuel into the cylinders. Fuel flows from the gascolator to the electric fuel pump to the engine-driven fuel pump through fuel lines. The gascolator is the lowest point in the fuel system. Its purpose is to filter out contaminants. The gascolator should also be drained to inspect for contaminants. The electric fuel pump is a backup fuel delivery system to the engine-driven fuel pump. The electric fuel pump should be on for all takeoffs and landings and when switching tanks. The electric fuel pump will not run on the emergency battery. The PA28181 has an engine-driven fuel pump to deliver fuel from the wings to the engine. Some high-wing aircraft use a gravity-fed system to deliver fuel to the engine instead. Fuel is brought from the engine-driven fuel pump through the fuel line to the fuel injector servo regulator. The amount of fuel and air is set by the throttle and mixture in the fuel injector servo regulator. The fuel is then sent to the fuel distributor. The throttle adjusts the amount of air and fuel that enter the engine. This allows us to change the power setting, measured in RPM. Fuel lines bring fuel from the fuel injector servo regulator to the fuel distributor. The fuel distributor then sends the amount of fuel set by the mixture to the cylinders through fuel lines to the fuel nozzle. Vapor lock typically occurs after shutdown when heat rises from the engine and vaporizes the fuel in the injector lines, making the engine hard to start. This is common on days with high ambient temperatures. Symptoms of vapor lock include fluctuation in RPM, poor engine response to throttle movement, high RPM drop during mag checks, engine failure when throttle is closed. The PA28181 can take 2 fuel types, 100 low lead, which is blue in color, and 100, which is green in color. The fuel should be a distinct color. If it is clear, that means 2 fuel types have been mixed. Do not fly. When putting the fuel cap on, verify it parallels the rivets. If it is not flush, the wind could move it and cause it to come off. The fuel should be summed from the left and right tank to examine it for contaminants. When examining the fuel, have a solid background color other than blue. Do not hold the fuel to the sky because the sky is also blue, and it will be difficult to verify the fuel color. Fuel is drained from the sump point on each tank. The sump point is located at the bottom of the tank on the underside of the wing. The reason the fuel tanks are sumped is to inspect the fuel for contaminants. This is what water looks like when mixed with fuel. Water is heavier than fuel, so it will sink below the fuel. The fuel tanks are located on the inboard part of each wing. They can hold 25 gallons of fuel. 24 gallons are usable, and 1 gallon is unusable. The metal tab inside the tank indicates 17 gallons. The fuel vent ensures that a vacuum is not created inside the fuel tank by allowing air to replace burned fuel. Fuel flows from the tanks to the fuel selector. The fuel selector valve sets which tank is providing fuel. It has 3 positions: left, right, and off. The left and right positions can be selected by twisting the red pointer. To switch the fuel selector to the off position, hold down the gray button and twist the red pointer to the off position. To switch the tanks, verify the fuel pump is on. The tank should be switched after the first 5 gallons of fuel burn and then every 10 gallons thereafter. The fuel sensor reads the fuel flow in gallons per hour. This information is displayed on the engine indication system on the multifunction display. The fuel quantity gauge reads the amount of fuel in the left and right tank. The fuel flow is read in gallons per hour.